Today we're going to take a 2D technical drawing and turn it into a 3D object in SolidWorks. Part of what we want to look at in this class is order of operation. So what steps do we take and when do we take them to create this object, and in an efficient manner. And you can see in this drawing that the object is bisected through the middle. So we can draw it on a plane and have parts rotate around that plane to create it. So when we're setting this up, it's in our advantage to set the part up so that it's sitting on a plane in that way, so that we can split it across. So let's go with that, and we'll start off, and I'll show you all the steps that we'll take. So the first thing we're going to do is we start ourselves a new part, and we're going to go on to the front plane, and we'll go normal to our front plane, and we will create a sketch. So let's go and we'll make some reference lines to start off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this as sketch 1, and I'm going to leave it visible so that we can see these reference lines as we go along. So I'll go here and I'll make sure that it is turned on so it doesn't say hide. And then we'll go up to our front plane again, and we'll create a new sketch. So that'll be our sketch 2. So we can look at this object, and we can see that it has the square part, and then it's got the round flange coming off the top. Start off, we'll draw the main body of the object. You don't need to worry about exact dimensions here, because we'll correct that in a little bit. So just draw roughly what the shape looks like. And you can see you get some snapping here, so it tells you that you're on, you're lined up with where the other lines are at. And there we go. So there's our main body. So then we'll go in and we'll say, okay, and we can go into Smart Dimensions. And once we're in Smart Dimensions, we can actually start giving these pieces values. So we can see on our technical drawing that this bottom piece is 70 across. So we can pull down on this. We can make that 70. That can be the first thing we do. And then we can see that we have 40 for the legs on this side. And up here on the top, you can see that it's 75 from this line over to the very edge of this piece here. So we can go here to here, and we drop that down and make that 75. All right. Now, part of the problem right now is that this isn't lined up on the center of this axis. So we can say okay to our dimensions here. We can come over here and we can find that center point. We can click on it, and let's put it on the origin. So we can push Control, click on that, and we can make those coincident. So that centers that line onto that point. All right. So we'll click on Smart Dimensions again. We know that our total distance across the top, so from this point to this point, is 90, but we do this as two line segments. So we'll go up here and we'll say this is 45, and we'll go up here and say this is 45. So that gives us 90 across. Now we're centered on this line as well on the top, and we know that our width of these bottom pieces is 15. Go there and say 15, and we're going to have to zoom in a little bit here. Pull this there and say that's 15. And then we can see that our height of this is also 15. All right, so we're just running into a few more things here that we need to fix. We want to make this line and this line even on the bottom. So in order to do that, we know that our height from this point to this line is 45. So we can go here to here, pull that over and make that 45. And we can go here to here and make that 45. All right, so we're getting there. So everything now is defined on this part, right? And if we turn around, we can see that it's one dimensional. It's all on that front plane, right? Or it's two dimensional. Sorry, and it's all on that front plane. What we want to do is we want to then expand it out. But like I said, this object is bisected around that front plane. So when we go to features and we do our extruded boss base, we want to do it in two directions. And so we can see that our total width of this object is 60. So if we do two directions, if we do 30 out one direction, and we do 30 out the other direction, that gives us our shape, and it's bisected around that center plane. So that's where we want to be, and we can say okay. All right, so this is our main base for this object. And now the next thing we'll do is we'll do the main center cone part. So in order to do that, we can go to our front plane again. We'll go normal, and we will do a new sketch. So with this, we're going to do this in multiple parts. So the first part we're going to do is we're going to draw the top part of that round pipe going in. So we'll go once again, and we can just do a square for this one. And we can go onto our line here and draw over and down. And there we go. And then we can give this some dimensions. We'll go into Smart Dimensions. We know that the main diameter of the full pipe going in is 50, so we know that this length has to be 25. And we know that the height of it, the whole part, is going to be, we have 45 and we have 80 for our total height. So we know that the height of this needs to be 35. All right, so that defines that piece right there. And we can say okay. And then we can go to features, and we can do a revolved boss base. And we can revolve it around this axis. We'll say okay. All right, now, so when we tip this around, you can see now we have this solid piece that's in the center. Now, just like with a lot of things in SolidWorks, there's multiple ways that we could go about doing this. We could have drawn this all as one, like the feature of the pipe, and then done just the revolve around that. But in this case, I feel that this is probably the quickest and fastest way to do this. So let's go back to our front plane. We'll go normal to our front plane, and we'll do a new sketch. All right, so inside of this pipe coming up, you can see that you kind of have a cone that goes down with the top flange to it. So we'll go on to our new sketch here, and we can start drawing that. And you only want to draw one side of it. Okay, so now we have that piece drawn there. And we can go in and we can add in our dimensions again. So we'll go into Smart Dimensions. We know that the diameter of that the first diameter that we're looking at, if you look up at the top part of the drawing there, it is 40. So we know that the radius for that is going to be 20. So we have 20 for the first lip, right? And then we can see that the second one is going to be 30. So we know that the distance from here to here has to be 30. So if we click on this point and click on the line, we pull that up. Well, we know it needs to be it needs to be 15 because the diameter is 30. So we want our radius to be 15. So we say 15. And so we know that the bottom of this cone has a radius of 10. So we can go to our smart dimensions. We grab that line and we drop down and we can say that's 10. So we know that this is 10 from that this length right here is 10. So we can grab onto here. Let me say that's 10. All right. So now that shape is fully defined. All right. And we can go say okay. And then we can go up here to our features and we can do a revolved cut. And we'll revolve it once again around this axis. And we say okay. And now when we look in, we can see that we've cut that cone into that shape. All right. And so we'll do two last features here on this that is associated with the front plane. We can go and we can go to our front plane here again. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the diagonal flanges that you can see on the bottom. And then we're also going to drill the hole in the front of that pipe coming out. So we'll go front plane. We'll do a new sketch. And we're going to do the hole first. So we go here. Escape. And then we can see that the diameter for that hole is 10. So we go to smart dimensions. We can tell that our diameter here is 10. And then we can see that the distance from the top of the pipe down to the center of that hole is 21. So we click on that line, click on that point, pull across, you say 21. That drops it down there. And that's all we need to do for that hole. It's now fully defined. And we say okay. And then we go to features and we do a extruded cut. And we're going to we can't really tell on the picture. We're going to assume that that hole goes all the way through. So we can say through all both. And we can say okay. And there you see, we've now cut that hole through both sides. All right, and then finally what we're going to do is our diagonals here. So once again, we'll go to the front plane. We'll go normal to it. And we'll do a new sketch. So we're on sketch 6 here. And we will go in and draw our triangles. All right, there we go. Okay, so then what we can do is we can mirror this entity. So if we click on this entity, we can go up here and we can say mirror entity. And we can mirror it about, and what we want to mirror it about is the right plane. So we can say the right plane there. And you can see then it flips it over onto this side. And we'll say okay. So now we have it on both sides. They're equal to each other. So when we change our dimensions, it will change it on both sides. So if we go into our smart dimensions here, we can see that this distance right here is going to be 15. And really that's the only dimension that we need to put in because everything else is already entered. So if we go smart dimensions and we grab this line and pull it down, say that's 15. And you can see it did it on both sides. And there we go. Now that's fully defined. We say okay. And now we can go to our features and we can extrude that out. And you can see up on the drawing, it says that the width of these is 12. And since we drew this on the front plane and this whole object is balanced around that front plane, we can go to extruded boss base and we can go down here and we can say 2 directions. And we can say 6 and 6. We say okay. And now you can see that we drew those pieces in. All right. So we've got that part done. Now all we have left is the holes that are on the flanges here and the rounding over the corners. So we're going to go and we're going to do the holes. I did this 2 different ways in class, and I'm going to do it 2 ways again. Just keep in mind that either one of these methods would work to do both sides. So I'm just going to show you how you could do this in 2 different ways. So the first way I'm going to show you how to do it is how to select a plane on your drawing to do your sketch on. So if we click on this plane right here, we can go normal to that plane, and we can do a sketch. And so this sketch now is going to occur on the top of this flange. So it's not actually on one of the main planes here. It's actually a sketch that's on this surface. So if we go back to being normal to that surface, we're going to draw 2 holes. And so we can take these, we can draw one here and another one here. Say escape. And then we can do a few things here to make our life a little bit easier. We know that those 2 holes are identical to each other. So we can click on one, push control, click on the other one. We can make them equal. And then we can go in and we will change our dimensions here a little bit. So we know that the diameter for these holes is going to be 12. So if we go to Smart Dimensions, we can grab one of them. We make it 12. You see it changes both of them. And then we know from the center of this hole to this line is going to be 15. And we know that from this center to this center is going to be 30. And we know that they are 15 from the edge. So from here to this line here is 15. And from here to this line here is 15. And there we go. Now they're fully defined, and they're where we want them to be. And we say OK. And then we can go up and we can do features again, and we'll do an extruded cut. And currently it's cutting down. It's only cutting down 6. We want to actually go through all. So we can say through all, and we say OK. And there we go. So we've got those 2 holes drilled there. Now the other way I was going to show you how you could do these is you can actually draw this on a plane. So since we set this up so that it's all drawn around the planes, we can go to the top plane here. We can go normal to our top plane, which looks identical to what it was when we were looking at this, when we were drawing on this flat of this flange. But you can see that flange is actually down below that plane. But this, for what we're doing here, this doesn't matter. So we can go to the top plane, we can go normal to it, and we can do a new sketch. And we'll do our new sketch over here on this side. So we'll draw another circle. And we know that this one is centered on that part. We can go into our Smart Dimensions. We see that this circle has a radius of 7. So when we pull off of here, it's going to actually show us diameter, but our diameter is going to be 14. We say OK. And so that is now fully defined because we were able to link it to this center line and that line on the far side of that flange because it's a bisected circle in the drawing. And we say OK to that. And you can see now that that drawing is actually up here on this plane. But for what we're doing, that doesn't really matter. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to Feature. We're going to do an Extruded Cut. And we're going to do Through All. And you can see that it took that drawing and is basically just cutting a hole out all the way through. And we say OK. And now you can see that it cut that hole all the way through it. So it doesn't matter that your drawing's up here. We're cutting all the way through that piece. So those are two different ways of setting up the same feature. Now, what we could have done is we could have drawn all three of these circles either on this plane up here that we were drawing, or when we were doing the other, when we did it with the two holes here, we could have drawn the third circle over here and cut them all at the same time. And if you were doing this, if you were actually building this and not using it as a lesson, that's probably what you would have done. So, all right, so now we have that. Let's go here and turn perspective on. So we can see that we're basically almost done here. Now the last thing we need to do is, you can see that there's chamfers on three of the, on this outside flange. It's got a chamfer on it. And then we have chamfers on this edge, the inside corners, and these inside corners here. So let's go through and we will go to our fillet tools, not chamfers. They're actually fillets because they're rounded over. And we know it's not going to be 10. So let's change this to 2 perhaps, and we'll see how that looks. We can click on this line, that line, this line over here, this line down here, that line in there. And since we drew that diagonal across, you need to come over and get the other line on the other side. That line right there. And based on the drawing, they don't actually give us that value on the sketch, but based on the drawing, that looks pretty close. And so we can say, okay. All right, see? So now we've got the fillets on our corners there, and now we want to round over these two corners as well. Now these, they actually give us a value for. So we can go to the fillet tool again. We can click on this corner here and this corner here, and we can say that we can see up here on the drawing that it is an R10. So we can change this to 10. We say okay, and there we go. And there's our piece drawn and finished. So that's how you go from a 2D drawing to a 3D object. And there's multiple steps in there. And like I said, there's multiple ways that you could have gone about this drawing. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly how I did it. And there's a few things, like when I was drilling the holes, where I did different steps just to show you different ways where you would do it all as one. But just because I did it in this order doesn't mean that you necessarily would have to do it in that order. But that is probably one of the quicker orders of operations to make this work, because it is centered around that plane, and we can turn on that. Let's turn on that front plane and make it visible so you can see. So it's, it's bisected by that plane, so it makes sense to set your drawing up so that it's bisecting around that plane. And then you can do a few things where you can put in your original reference lines and things like that to work off of. And the other thing with having it bisected around that plane and then centered around the origin is when we were doing things like drawing in these pieces, we're able to then mirror them around the base planes that are already set in the project. And so that's that for today. Thank you.